if on election day in 2016, if Mark Zuckerberg, for example, had chosen to send out a go vote reminder, say just to Democrats, and no one would have known if he had done this, that would have given that day an additional at least 450,000 votes to Democrats. And we know this without doubt because of Facebook's own published data, because they did an experiment that they didn't tell anyone about during the 2010 election. They published it in 2012. It had 60 million Facebook users involved. They sent out a go vote reminder, and they got something like 360,000 more people to get off their sofas and go vote who otherwise would have stayed home. The point is, I don't think that Mr. Zuckerberg sent out that reminder in 2016. I think he was overconfident. I think Google was overconfident. All these companies were. I don't think he sent that out. Without monitoring systems in place, we'll never know what these companies are doing. But the point is, in 2018, I'm sure they were more aggressive. We have lots of data to support that. And in 2020, you can bet that all of these companies are going to go all out. And the methods that they're using are invisible. They're subliminal. They're more powerful than most any effects I've ever seen in the behavioral sciences. And I've been in the behavioral sciences for almost 40 years.
Schools, our newsrooms, even our corporate boardrooms, there is a new far-left fascism that demands absolute allegiance. If you do not speak its language, perform its rituals, recite its mantras, and follow its commandments, then you will be censored, banished, blacklisted, persecuted, and punished. It's not going to happen to us. Make no mistake, this left-wing cultural revolution is designed to overthrow the American Revolution. In so doing, they would destroy the very civilization that rescued billions from poverty, disease, violence, and hunger, and that lifted humanity to new heights of achievement, discovery, and progress. To make this possible, they are determined to tear down every statue, symbol, and memory of our national heritage.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, I sit down for a one-on-one interview with the Facebook whistleblower Zach McElroy, who just came out with Project Veritas to expose how Facebook is censoring Christian conservatives ahead of the 2020 election. We also talk about how they are censoring things related to QAnon and all of the information that we're sharing here. So you guys are going to want to stick around to hear that and a whole lot more. And welcome back to Just Informed Talk. Today, we're joined by a very special individual, Zach McElroy. You might also know him as the Facebook whistleblower who came out with Project Veritas and exposed the way that the big tech company Facebook is controlling the conversation, and it is very terrifying, I think, for most out there. So, Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's get into the first thing I want to talk about here, which is give everyone a brief background on how you came to Project Veritas, the what motivated you to do that, and how you wanted to expose the way that they were moderating the conversation to effectively hurt conservatives on that platform. Talk about the whole genesis from the first time you heard of Project Veritas.
Yeah, that's a good way to start it. I think the story begins when I first heard of Project Veritas maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I don't even remember which video it was that I saw, but I had been aware of their existence for a long time, fan of their work. And flash forward about maybe like 4 years or so, January, well, I guess late 2018, I was looking for a new job. I had just moved to a new city and I got the first job that I could get. So I was working at a record store for minimum wage and I thought, well, I definitely need something better. So I looked at some of the listings and I found this sort of mysterious, vague job description for a job, tech job. doing content moderation. I thought, well, that sounds kind of similar to something I've done in the past, and maybe I'll give it a shot. So I applied, I went through the interview, and during the interview process, I found out that the work was going to be done for Facebook. It's at a different company, but they have the contract with Facebook. And so um, I managed to secure the job. And going into the job, I kind of expected, being a conservative, of course, I was a fan of PV. I expected to see the inner workings of their systems of bias inside Facebook policy, and the whole just sort of culture. I felt like I was kind of getting into the belly of the beast. So I right away knew that something was wrong, because I saw all of the biases in their policy and the exceptions to the policy that they make for themselves during the training course, which was about 4 weeks or a month. So right away I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't sure quite what to do about it, because well, what can you do with this information? I was just one guy. I couldn't leak these documents of their policies, their biased policies, online. Nobody would probably pay attention. I would probably be basically sticking myself out for nothing. Couldn't certainly go to any traditional legacy media. New York Times wouldn't have worked. Even The Verge, if I went to them with this information, of course they would have just ratted me out to Facebook probably, and totally wouldn't have gone anywhere. So yeah, to sum everything up, PV, Project Veritas, is about the only place, one of the only places, if not the only place, that does what they do in such a way, with this insider program and exposing bias in a really fair and even-handed manner. So it was kind of a natural matter, of course, that I came to meet with them officially later that year. I think it was maybe 6 or 7 months after I started the job that I happened to connect with them.
Tell us about how you connected with Project Veritas, and because when you're inside of a company, and I watched the videos and I've read a lot of the articles that talk about what you did, and when you see the conversations you're having there in the company, it just seems to me, it strikes me that there was a dynamic there, and then did that push you to move in that direction toward Project Veritas? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so like I said, I came into the job basically, a conservative. I'm conservative myself, so I knew what was going to be. I kind of knew what I was getting into, so to speak. And indeed, I had some pangs of guilt initially for being. I felt kind of complicit, I guess, in the machine that is censoring everybody online. But I quickly came to kind of reconcile that by thinking to myself, well, but at the same time, I'm kind of in a unique position. I'm one of the only conservative people in this office. I think I could probably be a silent voice for conservatives, I guess, behind the scenes, trying to keep things fair. And that's how I kind of thought that I would deal with it, until later that year, I happened to see Eric Cochran, the Pinterest whistleblower at Project Veritas. He gave a speech, and I was really inspired by that speech. It's kind of like it was a light bulb moment in my head, because like I said, I'd known of Project Veritas for a while, but it never clicked with me that I could come to them with this information. I'm not sure, maybe I thought this wouldn't be big enough, but sure enough, I exchanged business cards with them, and within, I think, a few weeks, we were rolling. They were very interested in the story, and they had some people come out and help me get set up.
Now, were you nervous when you had to get suited up with all these cameras and the microphones and everything? So for the recording, and was there any security concern when you were going into into this Cognizant office where, did they have security? Were you worried they were going to check you? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, there was security at the building. They actually don't let you bring your phone onto the production floor. They have to lock your phone up in a locker before you enter the workspace. You can't even bring a pencil and paper. They're very strict about keeping that information tight in there. Yet somehow, I actually was not nervous at all to have a camera on me. I think it might have been owed to to just how discreet the cameras really were. It was just something that you would never expect someone would probably be wearing or having on them. So that really gave me a lot of confidence, I think. And yeah, fortunately, it was just kind of a breeze. I guess, everybody's a little different, but I fortunately was not really nervous at all. And I don't think I really ever had very many close calls either. So.
All right, so let's talk about what the videos do uncover. So first off, let's talk about what it means to be defiltered off a queue. Could you explain that to the audience out there, and what that means as far as the internals of Cognizant and their moderating of the conversation on Facebook?
Yeah, certainly. So I think with respect to that quote, I'm not 100% sure how I would explain that. I think that's something that in my position as a content moderator, we saw that quote in the video. I'm not 100% sure how to explain that. I think that might be something that would be better explained by somebody on the programming side of things, perhaps. At the end of the day, we were just lowly moderators clicking away at people's posts that were reported. But to what I can say on my end and what I've witnessed, I can say certainly there are issues of bias within their policy, and specifically with their the memos that they give to their moderators, making exceptions for their own policy, essentially breaking their own rules and getting away with it because they said so. I think that's probably where the internal bias that I witnessed lay most.
Well, and I think you guys referred to it as a structural bias inside of the organization itself, where, like you said, you get these top-down memos. One of the ones that stood out to me was they were talking about Don Lemon. And you had this story come down your way, apparently, where he said white men are the biggest terror threat to this country. Now, so you talked about on that interview with James O'Keefe how that was labeled as newsworthy. That was a very common thing in your office, though, when there was something that maybe a liberal or a Democrat or a leftist, you would say, organization would put out there, that they would say, well, that's newsworthy. And then, so this was like a common occurrence, would you say?
Oh yeah, I would say that it's very easy and convenient for Facebook to draw out their policy, to write up their policy in such a way where, it's not that this is necessarily the case, but say hypothetically, they write a policy that's fair. Okay, so you've got a policy that's fair to both parties, left and right. It's very easy for them to make that policy fair for both parties, but then behind the scenes to make exceptions that favor one party or one political worldview over another, and that kind of gives them a sort of, I guess, a barrier of defense to say, well, but the policy, simply look at the policy's fair, when in reality they're kind of breaking their own rules when they want to favor one over the other. So effectively, they have effectively a broken policy. And the Don Lemon quote is a very good example of that, because it's the only reason they're allowing it is because it was quote unquote newsworthy. Well, what's more newsworthy about Don Lemon's quote than, say, any number of other right-leaning pundits saying other things that might be considered offensive that they might have taken down, that we probably wouldn't have had any problem taking down if it was, say, I don't know, Rush Limbaugh saying that blacks are the most potent, what did he say, terror threat in the country. I don't think they would have had any problem deleting and probably banning Rush Limbaugh if he ever said that. So Don Lemon certainly given special treatment, and I don't think it's just him. I think it's, of course, everybody on the left, and I don't think you can chalk it up to being quote-unquote newsworthy. What is newsworthy? I think that's really up for them to decide.
Well, and it's just another example of the way that they create these double standards, right? And so kind of taking that and going further, you said something in here that it was really terrifying about the algorithms, right? And you were talking about how up to 80% of posts selected by Facebook's algorithms for moderator review are ones that support President Trump, Republicans, and or conservative causes. So when you watch the videos with the interactions in you and your coworkers, it's so obvious that everyone in the majority of people in that office, let's say, are inherently biased against the right, which is fine. I mean, their own political views. But the fact that they take that and use that as fuel to go out there and to censor conservatives, and that there's algorithms that were created by Facebook that seem to bolster that belief. Do you think that was there any part of the hiring process where you were like, are they vetting me to see if I'm a conservative? Are they trying to filter me out if I am? And then further, what else, or how did that evolve when you started working there and then you saw this censorship? 80% of Trump supporters, Republicans, and conservative causes being filtered by an algorithm. Explain that to the people out there.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. That's a very big thing, I think, in particular. So they, Facebook, Instagram had rolled out a separate workflow of posts for moderators to review. So there's many ways that posts that get reported on the platform come through to us. We all we're supposed to get kind of a random sampling of all these different cues, which I guess are, you could say that they're meant to reflect certain policies. So there's a cue for hate speech, there's a cue for there is a cue that they rolled out.
Hey Zach, we're having trouble with
Yes.
your microphone right now. Something strange is happening. Could you explain those cues again? Because we cut out there.
Yeah, certainly. So they have separate workflows that essentially reflect the different policies that they have. So they have a workflow for posts that are considered hate speech, violent and graphic content, and so on and so forth. And late last year or early this year, they rolled out a new queue called the civic harassment queue, which doesn't actually reflect any particular policy, but rather is supposed to be a collection, a workflow, a collection of random posts on political figures pages. Think politicians, journalists, people generally in the political sphere. And this post, this queue, is supposed to send us and feed us random posts automatically culled from the pages and the comment sections of these figures pages. And the purpose of this is ostensibly supposed to be that we're trying to monitor, I guess, discussions about politics and political subjects leading up to the 2020 election to make sure that there's no bullying or harassment or otherwise policy violations in this discourse, which sounds innocent enough on its its own. And given that it's a bot that is collecting these posts randomly, one might think that, well, it'll probably be a fair, even-handed assortment of posts from both the left and right. However, what I noticed that was fishy about this queue was that almost a large majority, almost all of the posts in this queue were automatic reports of content from conservative pages and from Republicans and other folks on the right. And so to confirm this, I started making a habit of tallying every post that I saw come through that queue in my job on my workday. Is this a post or a comment from a Republican page or a conservative? Is it a liberal, a Democrat? And among hundreds and hundreds of posts that I reviewed and I tallied, I saw about 2/3 up to 70%, and on some days I saw pockets getting up higher to 80% of Republicans and conservatives are being automatically reported in that queue, as opposed to liberals or Democrats.
So if the algorithms are set up to forward parts of the discourse on the platform that is conservative to you, right, for review, did you feel that when you came to the company cognizant and then you were interviewed through that whole process that there was a vetting for your political leanings or what was there any, like, did that feel like you were getting that treatment when you were entering that environment?
That's a very good question. So it's an interesting answer. I would say that I didn't actually feel like I had any questions given to me that were in the interview process that were maybe designed to weed me out as a Republican or conservative. But I think there's a very specific reason for that. I think that Facebook has a tendency to hire employees or people at least even subcontracting with them in blue states and in blue cities. So I think they don't really even have to worry about tailoring the interview questions because it's a matter of course that most of their workforce tends to be left, I guess you could say left-leaning folks in blue states and cities.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a problem with the cues, right? We talked about the filtering off the queue, basically or filtering the queue, whatever you want to call it. It seems like there's an implicit bias against conservatives built into the whole system from the get-go, and you exposed it. So thank you so much for that. Now, kind of to switch gears here, I want to ask you about some other things. Like, so what did you see a lot when you're filtering through these posts? And were you getting red pilled at all when you saw things like, did you ever see any content about like QAnon or anything and things like that, Epstein and the rest?
Yeah, I believe I did see some Q posts. Certainly some Epstein didn't kill himself here or there. Well, like I said before, I've already came into the job as a conservative, so nothing really, I guess, red pilled me too much. I think I kind of already knew the relevant facts.
I would be more interested, I guess, to know how the people around you reacted to that kind of things. Did your coworkers ever talk about QAnon? Did they talk about, saying it's I have to block this, it's dangerous? I mean, did you get a lot of that?
Right. So that's a good point, and that's actually something I was going to get into as a more satisfactory answer probably to your question. There are actually some articles published, I think, over a year ago about people coming forward and kind of exposing some other issues that are unrelated to censorship at this office. And the article, I think it was very funny for me to read it. The article mentioned that a lot of people who, in the course of this job, kind of, as you said, became, I think, red-pilled and started becoming, I think there were some people that ended up becoming 9/11 truthers after seeing enough posts about it on the in the job. And yeah, I mean, folks around me, as far as I witnessed, I guess they didn't really get too in depth with politics. Most of their political discussions were surface level things about impeachment when that was happening, and yeah, I guess other things that were kind of in the daily news. But certainly a hive mind of sorts, given that I would say I was one of only maybe 3 or 4 Republicans or conservatives in the entire office of 500 to 600. So.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of glib remarks like Orange Man bad, impeach Trump, and et cetera. Yeah, okay. So for you personally, though, when you came into this job as a conservative, did you have an expectation that you would be able to make this big of an impact, or was it just you're still shocked to this day at what's happening?
I am surprised that this got as big as it did. As I said, I didn't even know who I could come to with the information initially, and even when I did go to Project Veritas, I didn't think that the story would be as big as it was. So I'm very happy with the way things have gone, and it's actually a good point, or it's a good time to say that I think my intentions for this have really evolved. Like the story evolved over the year of working there, but my intentions with this have evolved to the point that seeing how big this story is, and also the cosmic timing of this having been released not long after Trump's executive order and after Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act has been reintroduced into public discourse, I think that the strength of the story combined with the timing of all of this may actually lead to things that I never expected which would happen, which might be actual change, actual substantive change. I think the potential for legislative action in the wake of this is great. And I think it's perfect because it's about the only thing that I think we can do at this point to, like I said, enact some actual change. Because we've seen Mark Zuckerberg testify before Congress and say there's no bias at Facebook. He's placated people so many times in the past and nothing's ever happened. So I think our last option, our last resort is legislative action, and I'm hoping to see that happen soon.
Yeah, and to expose them from inside like what you did. And I can't thank you enough for that. I know my audience can't thank you enough. Also, I am a Christian conservative, and I'm also an evangelical. On my channel, I do preach the word of our Lord, and I can tell you right now that we will have an army of prayer warriors out there praying for you to be successful, to be protected, and to be able to have your voice heard by those who need to hear it. Because, I think the most simple term to put it all down in is we have good and evil in this world. And there has to be good people out there who stand up and do the right thing. And I know you stood up and did the right thing. So we're all going to be praying for you. And I thank you for coming on the show. Now, please let the people out there know your social media, where they can find you at. And I know you have a GoFundMe. We'll put a link to that in this video. If you guys are out there listening, go support Zach. He put a lot on the line to lose his job and to expose these people. So it's the least we could do is help you out. So tell the people where they can find you.
Well, thank you so much for the support. I really warmly appreciate that, and everybody who's watching too. I'll say that, well, my Twitter, if you want to keep up with my posts, I don't really have too much social media at the moment, but I've got a Twitter, which is at ZachMCE. That's ZACHMCE. And as you said, there's been a GoFundMe set up, which has been nothing short of it's been nothing short of humbling to see this outpouring of support in the wake of this. I've had this set up with a great degree of humility, because I'm a kind of guy who likes to work for his money. But it's such a crazy situation that I can't thank anybody enough for showing the support that they have. It leaves me speechless. The GoFundMe is GoFundMe.com/exposefacebook, which is also the hashtag on Twitter, is #exposefacebook. And so, yeah, get the word out there.
Well, you know, and I just have to say, though, we need to be rewarding people like you. And I think it needs to be done so that we can encourage others to come forward and show them that if they put everything on the line, we the people will stand up and support them, and we will help them get to wherever they need to go, the next chapter, because that's how we defeat this. We defeat it by coming together. So if anyone's out there watching and you're working in a big tech company, tell them how they can get in touch with Project Veritas so that they can expose the censorship and bias.
Veritas tips at protonmail.com, VERITAS tips at protonmail.com is their tip line. I think if you are on the inside of one of these companies like I was, definitely talk to them, because they will do you right. I think I can say from experience that the support that they gave me was immense and fantastic. So I think it's really critically important, especially given that the election is so close, we're running out of time, that we really need to see a tidal wave of people coming forward and, you know, voicing their dissent, speaking about what is really going on behind these companies. So if you have a conscience that's telling you something's wrong, definitely reach out to Project Veritas. It's so imperative. Even just today, apparently, we've seen, as of this recording, there was just a giant censoring purge, a big ban. I think a lot of people have been banned on Reddit and YouTube, and the president's own account on Twitch, apparently, I think, if I recall correctly, has just been suspended today. I don't know if it's an error. I guess we're still finding out. It's a big developing story. So there's a lot of terrible stuff going on, and it's not going to stop until we hold these people accountable. I think, as I said, legislative action is the only course of action that we've got at this point. And to that end, I am willing 1,000% to testify before Congress the things that I've seen. So I hope that we see that.
Yeah, and contact Project Veritas. Thank you, Zach. You are an inspiration. I hope you inspire others to do the same thing. We're going to expose these people, and we're going to take back our country. So thank you for joining us on the show today. God bless you, sir.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. It's always good to bring people on and get different perspectives, especially when it comes to showing what's actually happening behind the scenes of these big tech companies. So if you guys want to, please leave your thoughts, theories, and insights below. I want to hear what you guys have to say about everything that we talked about here today on this episode. Plus, if you want to find me on other social media and help share this content and get it out there, you can find me on Twitter at JustInformYou, also on Twitter at informed_news. Plus, I'm on Parlor at JustInformedTalk is the handle. Plus, justinformednews.com is the official website for Just Informed Talk, and the backup channel, BITCHUTE.com/justinformedtalk, is another way to get the content as well. Plus, you can help support this channel financially through Patreon, patreon.com/justinformedtalk. It's a crowdfunding website, monthly donation. Your support keeps this channel up and running. So I also have a GoFundMe set up if you'll make a one-time or anonymous donation. Links to everything will be in the description below this video, including a link to the GoFundMe for Zach and also his information on Project Veritas. So if you guys want to check that out, please do. Now, before we go, we do a segment at the end called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. Today, I want to share a very specific verse that has a lot of context, I think, to what we covered here today on the episode. And it's out of the book of 1 Peter. You know, we've been in this area of censorship and all of that, but we also have to remind ourselves of what we're called by God to do, you know, if that makes sense, right? So we have to lead by example. Not only do we want to have the freedom of speech available, we want to protect our civil liberties, protect our rights, but first and foremost, what do we want to do? And it says it right here. We're going to look at 1 Peter. This is chapter 3, verses 8 through 12. And it says, and this is talking about doing no evil. So I hope these words resonate for us right now. It says, now finally, all of you should be like-minded and sympathetic, should love believers and be compassionate and humble, not paying back evil for evil or insult for insult, but on the contrary, giving a blessing, since you were called for this, so that you can inherit a blessing. For the one who wants to love life and to see good days must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. And he must turn away from evil and do good. He must seek peace and pursue it, because the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their request. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. And I share these words with you guys tonight because this is part of the problem, right? A lot of us out there forget this and parts of it, you know, and I'm just as guilty as all of you. I'm not trying to preach down to you. I'm trying to preach up to you and say, look at Jesus. Look at the way that God teaches us how to live. Look at the way that we are called to do no evil, how we are meant to be like-minded and sympathetic. That's why all this censorship gets so out of hand so quickly, right? Because they're trying to affect us. They're trying to silence us. They're trying to restrict us. But we are called also to live by example. So my message here right now is to remember that, as it says here, we must be compassionate and humble and not pay back evil for evil or insult for insult, but on the contrary give a blessing, since we were called for this, so that we can inherit a blessing. So remember that, brothers and sisters, I beg you. As hard as it is, let us be compassionate and humble in the face of such evil, that we could be those who lead by example and set the tone for how our nation should be run, and show others that with great power comes great responsibility, and God intends for us to go through such adversity to build endurance, to make proven character inside of us, so that we can be able to overcome the evil that exists in this world. So that's my message. I share that because I truly believe it, and I hope you guys understand. And I thank you for listening. That's going to be where we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching this episode. Remember, if you liked it, hit that like button. Also hit that subscribe button. But that's it for me. Thanks for watching this episode of Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.